Takes multiple trips to get here. Hence you need the coat. Oh. Happy New Year! Okay, anyways, I'm just waffling. The whole point of today is I'm just going to waffle in the greenhouse while I sort myself out. As I said, Happy New Year. It's the 1st of January, folks. It's a whole new year and it's the beginning of prep for a whole new season as well. And, I've got things to do, but I'm a bit cluttered in my mind as well as in the greenhouse and all the planning and stuff. So I thought I'm just going to come out today with a cup of tea and I'm just going to organise my seeds and chat to you guys about sort of my thoughts and my plans and try and get them straight in my head as I chat to you. That's the plan. I don't know how well it's going to go. It's quite cold. I am really feeling it on my hands, so we shall see. Now, so you will notice there are a few things growing in here. Not a lot, but one or two, so I will explain that to you as well. And how I'm doing that, why I'm doing that. Yeah. Right, I've got stuff here that I'm going to need. Got my journal. Boxes of seeds. And there's seeds lying about all over the greenhouse. Oh man, I've got biscuits in my pocket. Oh. I put biscuits in my pocket to go in my cup of tea and then hung my jacket up on that side of the greenhouse. Right, so, as I said, things are a bit higgledy-piggledy in here. And it's not just the seeds. One of the things about January and the excitement and the starter, or at least the prepping to start the new season, because not everyone sows seeds in January, but there are lists of things that you need to get done before you can make a start, and that January's a great time for going through that kind of stuff and checking things off. And I was doing the same thing. I made myself a list. One of the things on my list, I had to glue my garden journal back together because the cover was peeling and coming apart. But yeah, so it's all the things to get started, because one, you guys know me well enough by now, so you know a few years ago, I think in 2020, I started the experiment of sowing my seeds early. So I'm going to say so a lot. So here in my garden, March is the perfect time for me to start sowing seeds in my greenhouse. There's enough light and there's enough warmth to have seeds that are planted in here germinate and to then grow them on into little plants in the perfect time, so that they're ready when it's time to either put them out in the garden, which is usually the start of June, or to just put them in their final homes, which is usually pots and quad grows and things in this greenhouse. So March is the perfect time for that, for my tomatoes, my peppers, the things I generally grow in my greenhouse. However, a few years ago I started the experiment of, what if I deliberately start things before then? What if I start my peppers and my tomatoes in January? What will happen? Will it help with my crop? And again, you guys know all of this because every year we do these roundup videos, and I showed you that actually, yes, it lets me get a head start, and this is especially useful on my bell peppers, which have a really long season. But what I found with my tomatoes especially is there actually comes a point, usually around kind of the end of July-ish, I think, where the seeds that were started off early and the seeds that were started in the greenhouse in March actually catch up and they level off. So from that period onwards, there's no real benefit. Yes, you might get the very first harvest of tomatoes earlier, but it's a small harvest and the plants catch up. So there's lots of things to think about. Rather than just saying everybody else on YouTube starts their seeds in January, there's things to think about. Because you can't just sow your seeds out here in the greenhouse and then everything's going to be great. Because That soil, if you're growing things like peppers and tomatoes, that soil that you're sowing in needs to be warm. It needs to be a warm 18 plus or so temperature for the seeds to germinate. And then when those little seedlings have germinated and start growing, those plants need warm temperatures to keep them happy, to keep them growing and thriving. And again, I did an experiment last year that showed me that it is not a good idea to put your plants out into your unheated greenhouse early. Okay, here's a big difference for you. This is the orange horizon pepper that has been in the greenhouse. No protection from the elements, it's just in the greenhouse. This is the one that's in the house. Look at the difference in size. It's craziness. And by early, I mean I think I put them out here Marchish and onwards. And it really stalled their growth. And not just for that short period of time, they never really picked up again the way they had in previous seasons. So it really had a negative effect on things. Now, that's the funny thing, because I said I can sow seeds here in March and bring those plants on. But that's a different thing. Sowing the seeds in this greenhouse in March and having those little seedlings as the light is improving and the temperature is growing is different from bringing a large plant out here that has lots of complicated needs and basically shocking it. So it's things to think about. So therefore, Biscuit, we're still getting through all of the Christmas chocolate and biscuits and cheese. You kind of get sick of it all. So therefore, this year, yes, I'm going to start my seeds for my peppers, my bell peppers in January, with a few other things. Like I'm going to be growing broad beans for the first time this year. I just want to test it out and see what it's like. And I'm going to be growing the dwarf variety Suttons. I'm going to be sowing that soon because it's quite a hardy plant. Now, not all beans are the same, so just be aware of that. Things like your climbing beans, your French beans, not as hardy as things like a broad bean, and even then the different varieties are different. So it's Sutton, I'm going to be doing this Sutton. It's quite hardy, so I'm going to start it in January. You could actually have started it back in autumn and then be bringing it on over the winter. And then you get a really early start and an earlier harvest with them. And a lot of folk do that to get over that thing called the hungry gap, which is the start of the year when you'd not really get any crops going. I meant to do that and I just never got around to it. So, I'm going to start them in January. Hopefully I can bring them on a bit in here and get them going just that little tiny bit earlier. We shall see. Experiment. Yeah. And there'll be other bits and pieces. Now, what you can see is I've got some microgreens growing here. I've never officially done microgreens before. I've kind of done it unofficially, just randomly tried things for fun. But I actually went and got one of these kits. So I got this from Grown Local, and it's one of the kits that you can choose the seeds, and then it comes with these little cardboard containers you grow in and cocoa coir for growing it in. Now you can see I haven't used these. I'm not really a massive fan of these little cardboard things because they're not reusable. Here in Scotland I find they just end up mouldy, and I had cocoa coir already, so I don't need to use that one. But I've got a bunch of seeds going, so I've got little radish seeds and I've got little broccoli seeds. There's chard, none of which have germinated. None. And I've got rocket in this one. And I've got a few different types of peas going in this one and this one. I don't know if you can see it or not. Hopefully you can see it. But the reason for this is I love pea shoots more than I like actually growing peas for the pods. As much as I used to love just picking peas in the garden and eating them because you can't beat fresh straight from the plant. But the pea shoots have all of that flavour and I just love them. So I kind of grow that. But I find I break the rules a little bit. Well, I don't know if there is a rule on this. The sort of traditional standard way people do microgreens is in cocoa coir, as I mentioned, because these little seedlings get harvested at seedling stage. Basically, you're eating sprouts, right? We don't say that anymore. It used to be the thing people, all the healthy folk would talk about how they eat mung bean sprouts and that kind of thing because it's really nutritious. That essentially is what your microgreens are. You're eating the sprouted seeds. And which, because of that, as we know, because we've talked about this, seeds germinate and those little seedlings don't need any nutrition straight away, which is why you can grow this in cocoa coir, because the idea is that by the time these little guys need nutrition, you'll already have harvested them and eaten them. That's the idea. The way it's going, we'll see. Now, the thing is as well, I changed that up. I put my pea shoots in a potting mix because I don't just harvest pea shoots once. These guys will keep growing and keep making pea shoots, so I do a few harvests, in which case they will need a bit of nutrition. So I do my pea shoots in compost or a potting mix. But this is just my way of doing things. It's not official, it's not correct, or it's not even wrong, it's just my way of doing it. But the thing is, it's cold and it's very dull at this time of year. So generally it's not a good time to be growing stuff like this. So what I've done is I've got these sitting on a heat mat. Now, it's not giving off any great shakes of heat. It's just warming the soil a bit. And that's how I've managed to get these to germinate. And they've germinated quite quickly. I'm quite impressed, actually. And hopefully that will just help them keep going until I harvest them. No guarantees, but fingers crossed. Okay, anyways, I'm just waffling. The whole point of today is I'm just going to waffle in the greenhouse while I sort myself out. Now, one of the things, my seeds are a mess. Like I say, I've got seeds just lying all over the greenhouse. Oh, and I need to organise. I've got these seeds, I need to keep it away. But I thought this might help me because it's January, it's New Year. And I know lots of you guys will have been doing all your plans, probably for a couple of months now, which is awesome. I haven't. I don't have a plan. I haven't even decided what I'm going to grow yet this year, which is not like me. I'm finding it a little bit disconcerting. But also, I was finding a bit of pressure about the whole plan in the garden and things, and I thought I'm just going to take a step back and just chill. And that's going to be my theme for this year. 2025, I think it's going to be the year where I'm going to really focus on the chill for the garden. Because I think since 2020, so many people got seriously into gardening in 2020, and loads of people get into growing food and got allotments and that kind of thing. And there's a lot of that on YouTube. You'll get so many videos all about that stuff, and it's brilliant that it's there. The thing is, that's not what my garden's about. My garden is an actual garden that's here for the purpose of joy and nothing else. I mean, I've got a couple of veg beds over there and I grow sort of veg in them, but that's not the purpose of my garden. My garden's just for me to enjoy. And I garden because I enjoy gardening. I enjoy growing things and just enjoy how sitting out here and it's all lovely. So I'm going to try and keep that chill feeling going this year. For anyone who's been feeling the pressure to have a productive garden, or to prove how much they can grow in such a small space, or make everything social media perfect, all that stuff, this is going to be it this year. This is our year, guys. We're just going to chill, and we're not going to let all these outside pressures ruin our garden for us. Yeah, that's like a big philosophical thing going on there, but yeah, that's what we're going to do. But anyways, so I know there are certain things I'm going to be growing, so let's do this then. And let's get my diary going. I'm going to need a pen. I bet I don't have a pen. Oh yeah, I do. Does it work? Yes, it works. Fabulous. Right. So, I know for definite then, I'm going to be doing my King of the North bell peppers. Absolutely, 100%, because they're just awesome. I love them. Bell peppers, right? King of the North is a variety I've been growing for years, and they give me really big, nice bell peppers. Thick-walled, big. They ripen beautifully in my greenhouse here in Scotland. Nice and reliable. But They are one of the ones that I'll start in January because it just gives me that little bit extra time to get the plant established and get it producing, so that I've got enough time to get as many of them to be ripe, to be red as possible. So January is for the King of the North then. So yeah, definitely. Now, you guys know I've got a system for doing my seeds because I did a video taking you through it. And what it is, now, I'll link the video if you want to see it in more detail, but basically, this box is just where I store all my seeds. They're all organised by type, so onions, salads, like that. This box is organised by month, and when I know what I'm sowing and when, it goes in the appropriate month box. So, King of the North is going in there, definitely. And I shall put you there. Now, what I'm going to do as well, last year I grew four different types of peppers last year, because I was bringing back some of the ones I used to grow a few years ago, and I'm going to do that again this year. I'm not going to grow 4 varieties, but one of them last year was Orange Horizon, which did okay. Now, given I said to you guys that I really ruined my pepper crops last year because I brought them out too early to the greenhouse, I'm going to give it another try. So that's this one, Orange Horizons. Got a few left, so I'm going to grow that one again because it was fun having the different coloured peppers last year rather than just red. That was brilliant. Shut that for just now. Orange Horizons. Now, beans. Where have I put them? Who knows? Let's see. I've got so many seeds that I have no intentions of growing. Oh, you doofus. So I couldn't find it. So I know I'm doing them, so I'm going to put them in April, and this is just how I organise my seeds. Now, I'm not going to just sit and do this with you because it would be really boring, but obviously there are going to be other things that I'll be growing shortly, and there are going to be other things that I'll be growing as grow-alongs with you guys this year as well. Again, in the very chill style. So we're going to start that off. I know a lot of you guys will like to grow the King of the North peppers with me, so that's awesome. Another one we're doing this year, and it's a big change. Onions. I have had stunning onions for the last few years. Massive, massive. And last year, I even got a second in our local veg growing show. I came second for my onions. The thing is, the onions I've been growing have been huge. Not deliberately so, they just have been. But through the years of learning all about growing onions, I've realised I was jumping in and I was sowing them in January and bringing them on indoors with the heat and the lights and all that kind of thing. Which is great because they like a bit of warmth to get established before we plant them out into the garden in, say, April. But it was maybe a bit too much time to get them established. So I have a bit of a challenge for myself on onions this year, and it's not going to be what you expect. So I know Fabby Pete is doing the giant onion grow along challenge, and I know loads of you guys are joining in. I've challenged myself to do the opposite because I found that those huge onions I was growing were just impractical for the kitchen. So we used the last 2 on Christmas Eve because we have a tradition on Christmas Eve, we have French onion soup for dinner. And we had these last 2 massive onions because we were just finding they were too big, and you were only using, say, a quarter or an eighth of an onion at a time, and then you chopped that onion up and then you had to store it in the fridge, otherwise it would go bad. And it's just much easier to have small onions where you can use a half an onion, a whole onion when you're cooking. So this year I'm going to try and grow normal sized onions rather than the big huge Ailsa Craigs. So I've changed my variety and I'm changing my time for sowing my seeds. So this year's onions, I'm going to be growing 2 types. I've got Walla Walla and Kamal, I think it is, F1. So let me get those seeds. Nothing is where it should be. What have I done with these seeds? I'm just going to have to start going through boxes. I've obviously put things in the wrong box. Oh yeah, that's another grow along. So I wonder if I put them in here. Nope. I need to have a tidy up and get rid of seeds I'm not growing. Oh, I know what I've done. I'll bet you. I started sorting my seeds and I've already put them in the box. So they're in the February box because I'm actually going to wait till February before I sow my onion seeds this year. And Kamal F1, which is the red onion, and Walla Walla, which is the brown onion. My whole purpose is to go normal sized, culinary, normal sized onions for cooking this year. That's my plan. Okay, now they're in February. When I was going through the boxes, I said to you there was going to be some other stuff that's going to be for growing alongs. Now, one of these things I'm going to do this year, again, for a change and for fun, I'm going to completely change up my tomatoes this year. And I'm even going to break the rules, because last year I told you guys that from now on I was going to grow Barry's Crazy Cherry and Luffy Schwa because you got so many tomatoes. I'm not growing them at all this year. In fact, I am not growing any indeterminate tomatoes this year. I am growing all dwarf and micro tomatoes this year. All of them. And I'm going to have fun with this. So, few reasons, right? These are plants that grow very quickly and you get harvest very quickly. I've introduced you to these maybe the last 2 years, I think, just a few every year, and I've been telling you about them. They are absolutely fantastic if you have a short cold season because they come on so quickly. I've got some that have 40-day seasons. So I'm going to be doing a lot of this stuff for that purpose. Same as I've done the last couple of years, I'm going to do a whole tier of the green stock that will be full of these little tomatoes. And I'm going to have lots grown in here as well. And that's a whole thing that's a bit more of the chill and fun for me because I won't have to put this bench down and it means it won't take up this entire side with quad grows. Instead, I can get lots of different tomatoes all grown on this bench, all in pots. They'll all be in pots that are maybe this size, maybe a bit smaller. Don't need heaps of space. So that's the fun, and I've got lots of varieties. So the fun of this is dwarf and micro tomatoes. These are the size of the plants, not the size of the fruit. So I have dwarf plants that will give me normal slicing or salad sized tomatoes, and I have micro plants that will give me normal cherry sized tomatoes, and I'm going to go for that. Now, a micro and a dwarf plant, the difference is purely in their size, their growing habit. They're all bush plants, so they're all determinate plants, but the micro ones will only grow maybe 40 centimetres tall. The dwarf might grow a bit bigger, so they might grow maybe 50, 60 centimetres tall. None of them are going to be big, huge plants like your standard plants. But I've got lots. So I haven't really decided what I'm going to grow this year because I've got so many. And unfortunately, I've also got so many seeds in here that have been gifts from people that I've just not managed to grow because I haven't had the space. So these are probably going to be for another year. But let's see. So what have I actually got so I don't have to go and buy seeds then? So we've got Pendulina Orange. I grew them last year, so they're a small bush plant, so a dwarf plant. Little orange, elongated sort of cherry tomatoes, and I grew them out in the green stock last year. Aztec Yellow, it's a micro, it gives little yellow cherries. Really, really fabulous micro plant. Grew it last year on the window ledge. And Mori Dewdrop, this is one of my favourites. This is more of a dwarf size plant, and it gives little red cherry tomatoes. One of the first tomatoes to harvest in my garden for the last 2 years. And again, I grew it in the green stock outdoors. Fabulous. Now, I didn't try this last year. Tiny Tiger. It's a micro, and it's orange, stripy but large cherry tomatoes. And I got all these seeds from Camilla at Camilla's Country Living that you guys saw me visit her garden in the last video, okay? Now she's put on this that it's a perfect snacking tomato. So, Chibico, grew these last year. A dwarf plant, a bigger plant than I was expecting. The tiniest cherry tomatoes on it, but those tomatoes, they were tiny, but the flavour, they were little bombs of flavour, but it was a much taller plant. It was about that size. Tiny Tim, little micro plant with little red cherries. This guy, Mongolian dwarf. So dwarf rather than micro. So I think it got to about 50 centimetres tall when I grew it the other year. But this is the one I was telling you about. Dwarf plant, but it grows full-size slicing tomatoes and they taste fabulous. Again, another one I've grown out in the green stock. Now, not tried this one. Bush, sort of small bush plant with medium-sized orange tomatoes. Very, very early and very hardy, and it's called Gold Dust. So, giving that a try. And Bahaha, spelt B-A-J. So I'm going to give this a try. Apparently it's a very prolific little bush tomato. So it's another dwarf one. It's adaptable, grows with the size of the pot. Now that's good to know because you can put the plants in a smaller pot and keep the plant itself smaller. Or if you put it in a larger pot, some of those plants will actually grow to the size of the pot. So if I want a larger plant, I can put it in a larger pot. So yeah, good to know. So it's another red cherry tomatoes, and apparently great for snacking and salads, that one. So that's lots of tomato varieties I'm going to be growing. All of them small plants. So I'll be growing some in the greenhouse and some in the green stock, but I'm going to start them off as a bit of a mix because you don't want plants getting too big before they're ready to be planted out in their final home. And tomatoes grow fast. So this is always a risk when you grow tomatoes early. So some of these, the ones that are going to be destined for the green stock out in the garden, I'm not going to sow them until March. And it'll be late March. But the ones that I'm going to grow on, so I might grow some in the window ledge in the house, for instance, and that lets us get really, really early harvest. I'm going to start them off a bit earlier. And because they're small plants, the micros, I can actually start early and not bring them out here until it gets warm, say at the end of April. So it gives me options because they're really small plants. So all of these need to be sorted into February and March. So let's see. So if I say right, Mongolian dwarf, 100% I will be growing that in the green stock. So that's going to be March. And Mori Dewdrop, 100% I'll be growing that in the green stock. So that's going to be March. Pendulina Orange, green stock, so March. Chibico, I'm going to do in the green stock, so again, March. So that leaves me Gold Dust, Tiny Tim, Aztec Yellow, Tiny Tiger, and Bahaha. I'm going to start these in February in the house. So they go in my February box. So, Bahaha, Tiny Tiger, Aztec Yellow, and Tiny Tim. So it's 2 tinies and gold dust. All for an early sowing. And then for the end of March, and I'll tell you about these 2, I've got Anne-Marie Dewdrop, Pendulina Orange, Chibico, and Mongolian Dwarf. In the box for March. Right, that's what I'm going to tell you from just now. I'm going to carry on organising, and then next time I see you, I'll tell you about some of the other seeds I'm going to be growing this year. And yeah, we'll get started on sowing the seeds next time as well. See you, folks.